It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. And then there were two. Donald Trump confirms Ukraine's president won't attend his talks with Vladimir Putin and says both countries will need to give up land.
At the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made. Because that's what I do. I make deals.
The US president says his meeting with Mr. Putin will be what he calls a feel-out. Europe says any concessions to Russia shouldn't even be discussed. Also tonight, the doctors cowering in terror in a Syrian hospital. The evidence of extrajudicial killing the country's government says it condemns. The condemnation of Israel's latest attack in Gaza, which killed 5 Al Jazeera journalists. Israel says one was a terrorist for Hamas. Why the latest heatwave to hit England this summer could be the hottest yet. Working full-time, struggling big time, we see the impact of the cost of living crisis in a quintessential Middle England town. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello, good evening. Donald Trump says he's going to try to get some prime territory back for Ukraine when he meets President Putin on Friday. But that was pretty much the only positive message the country might have taken from his words today. The US president again criticised President Zelensky, said he alone would meet his Russian counterpart, and that one outcome of the occasion might be that he just wishes Ukraine lots of luck. In a moment, we'll hear the assessment of our security and defence analyst, Michael Clark, on where land swaps between Ukraine and Russia might take place. But first, from Washington, our US correspondent David Blevins has this report.
He can pack the press room at the White House.
Wow.
But Zelensky won't be in the room when Trump meets Putin on Friday.
I expect to have a meeting with Putin that I think it'll be good, but it might be bad. But I'm going to meet with him. We're going to see what the parameters are. I'm then going to call up President Zelensky and the European leaders right after the meeting, yeah. And I'm going to tell them what kind of a deal. I'm not going to make a deal. It's not up to me to make a deal.
He gave Putin credit for his willingness to travel to Alaska and expressed frustration with Zelensky again.
I thought it was very respectful that the president of Russia is coming to our country as opposed to us going to his country or even a third-party place. I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelensky was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap.
But the violence continues in Ukraine, and Putin is not preparing to end the war, according to a report from Ukraine's military intelligence.
Putin is determined only to present a meeting with America as his personal victory and then continue acting exactly as before, applying the same pressure on Ukraine as before. So far, there is no indication whatsoever that the Russians have received signals to prepare for a post-war situation.
He'd actually called this press conference to announce a crackdown on crime in Washington. The president announcing sweeping measures, like placing the city's police force under federal control.
This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly.
It may seem strange that Donald Trump is talking about reclaiming Washington, a domestic issue, just days before he steps onto the international stage with Vladimir Putin. But he's positioning himself as bold and uncompromising as he prepares to meet a man who is bold and uncompromising. And he believes he's mastered the art of the possible deal.
Well, we're going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, and at the end of that meeting, probably in the first 2 minutes, I'll know exactly whether or not a deal can be made. How will you know that? Because that's what I do. I make deals.
But he can't make a deal without Zelensky. So for now, this is a Trump-Putin power play. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Well, last summer, Ukraine conducted a lightning offensive into Russia, holding at its peak more than 750 square miles, according to President Zelensky. Now, any exchange of territory is likely to be firmly inside the official international boundaries of Ukraine, as our security and defence analyst Michael Clark explains.
Well, as a result of President Trump's press conference, this chaotic road to Alaska on Friday is looking a little bit clearer. So we now know that he said he will speak to Zelensky and all the European leaders immediately after he's had his one-to-one with President Putin. The Europeans are also due to have a joint call, apparently, on Wednesday this week with Zelensky present and with Trump, if that goes ahead. So they'll, in theory, will talk to him on Wednesday, and then he will talk to them immediately after the close of the summit. He talks about land swaps, and what he may mean by land swaps is the idea that somehow that the Russians might withdraw from the areas they hold in Sumy and Kharkiv, just slim areas there. There's no advantage to them for it, so they might withdraw from that. So Sumy itself might become a safer city as a result of this. Further round on the map, the Russians are determined that they will hold on to the Donbass, which means Luhansk and Donetsk. And they already hold Luhansk and about three-quarters of Donetsk, and they're fighting hard to surround Chaziv Yar and also the Pokrovsk, which is just further west of Chaziv Yar. If the Ukrainians have to give up that territory, if they have to move out of those areas that they fought for so hard and give Slavyansk and Kramatorsk away to the Russians, which is the essence of the Donbass, that will hurt them quite a lot. So that's what a land swap might look like. The Russians will say, we will settle for the whole of the Donbass. We haven't conquered it all yet, but we want the whole of the Donbass, and Ukraine must leave, and in return we'll get out of Sumy and we'll get out of Kharkiv. They also say they might withdraw from some parts of southern Zaporizhia and Kherson, but even if they do that, they would demand the ability to hold a land bridge open between the Donbass and Crimea. So if they are going to withdraw from any of those areas, southern Zaporizhia and Kherson, it won't be very much. Ultimately, these so-called land swaps are almost certain to be unacceptable to Ukraine and unacceptable to Zelensky. And what the Russians will try to create is this sense that they've made their concessions, they know what they're talking about, the Americans don't really know what they're talking about, they're all very vague about it. And so it's Zelensky who's the obstacle to peace, and they hope then that the United States will then just withdraw military aid to Ukraine, and as President Trump said in his press conference, we might just say, good luck, off you go. And he would walk away, leaving the war to Putin. That, I'm sure, is where Putin now thinks the meeting in Alaska might take him.
Let's speak now to David Blevins in Washington tonight. David, has Trump given the game away, presenting his cards too early to Putin, who comes to Alaska looking for a permanent land grab, never mind a land swap?
Well, he may have given the game away to some extent by confirming that it will be a bilateral summit as opposed to a trilateral summit. So any Trump-Putin pact would be a deal imposed on Ukraine. Hence the statement from the Prime Minister tonight that a deal cannot be imposed on Ukraine. And also perhaps by confirming that he is wedded to this idea of a land swap as part of any deal. Trump appears irritated by Zelensky telling him he doesn't have constitutional power to approve that, and perhaps by the fact that European leaders at the weekend said they were still committed to the principle of borders not being changed by force. Not for the first time, Donald Trump has expressed great confidence in his own ability, telling us that he'll know within a matter of minutes if Putin is ready to do business. But right now, it does seem that Putin holds the strongest hand. Now, you couldn't understate the significance, of course, of a Trump-Putin meeting. They haven't come face to face for 6 years, but it does feel like we're going to have to wait much longer for a Trump-Putin-Zelensky summit and for any hope of an end to the war in Ukraine.
David Blevins there in Washington. Thank you. The Syrian government has denounced and condemned footage seen by Sky News, which appears to show soldiers shooting dead in cold blood a hospital volunteer. The incident took place in the mainly Druze city of Suwaida in July. The video, taken by CCTV cameras, shows uniformed men entering the hospital and forcing medical staff to the ground. Suwaida is in the south of Syria, close to the country's borders with Jordan and Israel. Our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, went there during last month's violence. A warning that her latest report includes pictures of the body bags of the victims and the moments before and after the shooting of the hospital worker.
The CCTV we've obtained shows armed men in military uniform entering Sweda National Hospital in the mainly Druze city in South Syria. The footage is stamped with the date and time. It's July 16 and around mid-afternoon. We've corroborated this with eyewitnesses from inside the hospital. As more medics and volunteers are assembled in the hospital entrance, the men tell them they're government troops. Those present said they shouted slurs about the Druze minority and warned them against treating any injured Druze. A scuffle breaks out with one of the male volunteers who's been helping out at the hospital. He's shot twice by this soldier, and a third time by a second soldier. They were warned not to talk or share any film of the incident, or they too would be killed. One of those present, who requested anonymity, told us he feared for his life. He believed they'd all be shot dead. They told us, "We will kill you. You are Druze. You are infidels." We were inside the hospital a few days after the shooting, walked through the entrance lobby where the shooting happened, and spent several hours talking to dozens of people, witnesses and survivors. There were dozens of corpses still laid out in the hospital courtyard, most unidentified. The medics said most of the dead appeared to have been brought to the hospital after being killed elsewhere. There were days of brutal clashes between Arab tribes and Druze militia, with accusations that some government troops also carried out atrocities. But this is the first visual evidence showing government troops inside the hospital. And there's at least one video showing they attempted to smash the CCTV cameras. One government tank can be seen in another camera angle manoeuvring around the hospital perimeter. By this time, Israeli forces were bombing targets in Sweda and Damascus in an attempt to force the Syrian army troops to withdraw. In the days which followed, we saw days of bloodletting throughout Sweda, and we witnessed Arab tribes setting fire to homes and taking part in mass looting for days before a ceasefire was enforced and government troops set up barricades and checkpoints. When we reached the hospital, they were emerging from days of confinement, with many telling us of the Syrian army involvement.
He was at the house.
ورحت قطع المشفى لساعد الناس اللي هوني.
And he come to the hospital to help the people.
ففجأة بلاقي الدبابات بوجهي بيصيروا يقوسوا علي.
And he saw a tank next to the hospital and he started shooting at him.
It's the government who sent those troops. It's the government of Syria who killed those people. We have a lot of pictures. We have a lot of scenes. You know, we need help.
The Syrian Interior Ministry says it is investigating the video and condemns and denounces the act. It goes on to promise the perpetrators will be held accountable and brought to justice. The perpetrators should be relatively easy to track down, given the amount of images they're seen in. One in the group is wearing print on the back of his top, associated with the government interior security forces. But those in the hospital told us they're not confident of justice being served.
Yes, Alex, I'm with you. I think this very big evidence that they are tourists. We can't believe them. We can't feeling anything of security. We can't live in peace with them. We can't live in peace with them, I think.
What exactly happened inside Sweda is certain to come up when the new Syrian president attends the UN General Assembly next month, the first by a Syrian leader since 1967, and at a time when the country is still simmering with discontent, fear and instability. Alex Crawford, Sky News.
The UK and EU have joined in the condemnation today of an attack by Israeli forces in Gaza, which killed 5 journalists. The men worked for Al Jazeera, and the Israel Defense Forces said one of them, Anas al-Sharif, a reporter well known across the Middle East, was in fact what it called a Hamas terrorist. Our international correspondent, Diana Magnay, has more.
An Israeli airstrike
ripping through the quiet of the night. The flash illuminating the Gaza City skyline. Moments later, the news came through. Anas al-Sharif, a 28-year-old reporter for Al Jazeera Arabic, had been killed along with 4 of his colleagues. He is on the left, then Ibrahim Zahar, Mohammed Noufal, Moamen Aliwa and Mohammed Kreika. The tent they lived in and broadcast from, just by the Al-Shifa hospital, completely destroyed.
I found Anas al-Sharif lying on the ground here. I saw Mohammed Kreika with flames engulfing his body. We started pulling him and putting out the fire. We found Noufal without a head. We found him here, beheaded.
Al-Sharif was a household name in the Middle East, a voice for Gaza and for Gaza City, where he'd stayed to report even as most residents of the north fled south. Famously taking his flak jacket off live on air on the announcement of a ceasefire in January, for crying over a fellow Al Jazeera journalist killed earlier in the war. Israel has long accused al-Sharif of being a Hamas terrorist posing as a journalist. They say he ran a platoon which targeted Israeli civilians with rockets, and that these documents prove it, showing his name, military ID and telephone number on a series of Hamas lists. They have given no reason for killing his colleagues.
They've been making this claim for many, many months, most recently in the last couple of weeks, following a report that Anas did on starvation in Gaza, in which he cried on air. And after that, we saw an uptick in the accusations by the Israeli military, and we, in fact, issued a statement saying that we feared for his life, and unfortunately, that's what has happened.
These funerals are a chilling moment for the journalistic community within Gaza and for people there who don't feel that the world is listening to them. Especially now, as Israel steps up its assault on Gaza City. Sunday night's bombardment, an indication of what's to come. At least 190 media workers have been killed in Gaza since October the 7th, all Palestinian journalists, a horrific toll. This was the last video that al-Sharif posted, moments before he died. Diana Magnay, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Well, in the last few moments, the Israel Defense Forces spokesperson has issued clarification on what they say is the death of al-Sharif. Prior to the strike, the statement says, we obtained current intelligence indicating that Sharif was an active Hamas military wing operative at the time of his elimination. What we have presented publicly is only a small declassified portion of our intelligence on al-Sharif leading up to the strike. This information, the statement says, was obtained during ground operations in Gaza at 2 separate locations. Trust me, I am not a terrorist, apparently works if you are against Israel. Clearly, Al Jazeera and Anas al-Sharif himself denied that he was anything to do with Hamas and their military wing. Now, there is a decent chance, you've already noticed, but the UK is going through its 4th heatwave of the summer. An amber health alert has been put in place for large parts of England from tomorrow morning. A yellow weather warning has been issued for other parts of the country. Temperatures are forecast to reach as high as 35 degrees in southern England. Prince Harry and Meghan have signed a new Netflix deal, calling it a multi-year agreement for film and television projects. 5 years ago, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex secured a Netflix contract thought to be worth more than £74 million after quitting as senior working royals in 2020. And just the day after they won this season's Community Shield, Crystal Palace have lost their appeal to remain in another cup competition. The Premier League club have been demoted from the Europa League due to a breach of multi-club ownership rules. It's fair to say that a potential toughening up of the rules on drivers over the age of 70 being mooted by the government isn't universally popular. One man we spoke to today summed it up. You're already expected to work to 67, he said, and some people need to work past that date. The proposals would involve eyesight tests and would also encompass a crackdown on drink and drugs driving for all motorists. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, spoke to the family of one road traffic accident to hear why.
If he hadn't have been out on bail with a licence, Tim would still be alive.
The driver who killed Tim Burgess had been arrested after another crash 10 days earlier. He kept his licence because police had to wait for a blood test to confirm he was under the influence of drugs, rather than accept as evidence a roadside saliva test like this one. That could now change, something Tim's family have campaigned for.
It means everything because, 5 people per day are losing their lives on UK roads, and there's so much complacency around drug driving and drink driving and road deaths, really. And it's got to stop. We need urgent reform around these laws.
What's been called the biggest shake-up of driving rules for years could also see the drink-drive limit in England and Wales lowered in line with Scotland and ban drivers over 70 if they fail compulsory eye tests. Something largely welcomed by those who've driven to the seaside today.
Some people will not admit that their eyesight is failing, and anything to make roads safer is a plus.
People, unless they're forced to, in a lot of cases, will not give up driving under any circumstances.
I certainly don't think 70 is a reasonable cut-off. I mean, you're expected to work till you're 67, and some people work past that who need a licence to sustain their income.
Statistically, driving in the UK is safer than it's ever been, but last year nearly 28,000 people were injured on the roads. The cost to the NHS, £2 billion a year. Campaigners have welcomed the proposals if they can be delivered.
We've got to look at younger drivers, we've got to look at older drivers, we've got to look at people who drive for work, for example. But for us, it is also about making sure that if there are any updates to laws, that we have the necessary enforcement behind it. So we must make sure that we're effectively funding our police forces so that they can take proper enforcement action.
With a bit of saliva in and around your mouth for me now.
The numbers caught drug driving has increased dramatically in recent years, but the decline in deaths and injuries on the roads has also slowed.
Under arrest on suspicion of driving a motor vehicle while under the influence of cocaine.
The government strategy will be published in the autumn. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Food banks have become a fact of life across many towns and cities in the UK in recent years. But what's not familiar is the range of people who are now using them. In one town, Cannock in the Midlands, we were told a third of the people using food banks there work full-time. They've been hit by the surging inflation since the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, especially on food and energy bills. Our communities correspondent Lisa Holland reports.
Cannock in Staffordshire has always been a Middle England kind of place, and not just geographically, always voting the way of the country.
Thank you.
But the mouths being fed from this free community food table give us sobering insight into just how deep the cost of living crisis is biting.
Thank you very much.
Would you say you have a good job?
Yes, yeah, it's a good job, yeah. I'm earning pretty decent money, but it's not enough. I'll have some beans, please.
Rebecca Flynn works full-time as an office manager for a day service for people with learning difficulties. On top of that, she has a second job going door-to-door evenings and weekends, selling cosmetics and homeware.
I need to come here, otherwise we'd be living on bread.
Organisers say a third of the people who come to this food project are working full-time.
It's mad that you should have to. You're working in a good job, you'd think you'd be able to afford everything and going on holidays and everything like that. We're seeing a massive increase in the people that are using the food table, people that are coming. We see them in their work outfits, and that's professionals that are nurses, and you don't expect them to be struggling because they're working full-time.
After 20 years in the classroom, Louise Schwartz now has 3 jobs, working 50 hours a week, including giving private music lessons. Her husband is an estate agent. They have a mortgage and 3 cars, and together earn around £80,000 a year.
Where does all the money go for you?
We don't do expensive supermarkets. We don't do expensive brands. We do whatever's on offer for that particular week. My eldest son has started driving. I'm really lucky that we've got a hot tub in the garden that we bought years ago, but at the moment we can't afford to turn it on because of the electricity. This year we can't afford to go on holiday this year. We don't have the funds for that.
The cost of living crisis is impacting people across the UK. Some of the biggest shifts are in daily essentials like food and energy prices, which have both increased dramatically, making life in the UK more expensive. But one area that has been particularly hard hit is the constituency of Cannock Chase in Staffordshire. Wages here used to match the national average in 2021, but that's not the case anymore. Although wages across the UK have risen by 21.6% over 3 years, in Cannock Chase they've only increased by 8.4%.
You're looking forward to your holiday?
Heidi Boot owns a beauty salon in the town centre.
It's a shame, to be honest, because people are working so hard for their money. They've paid all the bills and now they've got nothing left to spend on themselves.
And this is the middle class cost of living crisis?
Yeah.
The government says it's taking action to give workers more money in their pockets, but there's no denying the despairing mood of Middle England in the political battlegrounds which brought Labour to power. Lisa Holland, Sky News, Cannock. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, joined by the Sun's political editor, Jack Elsom, and the political correspondent for Politics Joe, Ava Santina Evans. Welcome and lovely to see both of you. Among the stories we'll be discussing this on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Its headline, Kyiv ready to give up land for peace. We'll be back with that and more after this break.